The tension inside the House Armed Services Committee hearing room was unmistakable as Fox News host and Army veteran Pete Hegseth adjusted his microphone. The C-SPAN cameras focused on his confident expression as he straightened his navy blue tie, the small American flag pin on his lapel catching the light. Across the table, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett sat poised and calm, her deep burgundy blazer creating a striking contrast against the chamber's wood-paneled backdrop. Congresswoman Crockett, Hegseth began, his tone polished and commanding. Before I address the committee's concerns about military readiness, I need to raise an issue that's been on the minds of many veterans. You've been outspoken about defense spending and veterans' benefits recently, but with all due respect, those of us who've actually served question whether someone without military experience should be making such bold claims about what our troops truly need. The Republican members of the committee nodded in approval, clearly expecting Crockett to falter or retreat. But what they didn't realize was that the Congresswoman had come fully prepared, with facts that would not only defend her stance but completely unravel Hegseth's attack. Within just a few minutes, Jasmine Crockett would reveal details about Hegseth's own military background that left him stunned, drawing gasps from the audience and leaving the Fox News commentator visibly shaken as his credibility began to crumble live on air. The dramatic exchange instantly went viral. Veterans across party lines jumped into the discussion, many calling it one of the most powerful congressional takedowns ever caught on camera. But before we dive into exactly how Crockett turned the tables, make sure to subscribe and comment where you're watching from. You won't want to miss the rest of our coverage on the most explosive political showdowns. In Washington, this moment had been building for years. Pete Hegseth had built his entire media reputation around his military service, frequently appearing on Fox News as their leading veteran voice. A Princeton graduate who served in the Army National Guard with tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, he often used his service record to reinforce his credibility and question the expertise of those who hadn't worn the uniform. At 43, Hegseth cultivated the persona of a hardened soldier turned media commentator. His book American Crusade featured him in combat gear on the cover, while his Fox News bio prominently highlighted his military deployments. When discussing veteran issues or national defense, he often began with phrases like, "When I was downrange," or "Those of us who've seen combat understand." These statements worked as a rhetorical shield, implying that only those who had served could truly grasp the complexities of military life. Invited by Republican members as a special witness for the hearing on veterans support programs, Hegseth arrived eager to challenge what he viewed as Democratic misconceptions about the military. In the week leading up to the hearing, he had criticized Congresswoman Crockett on his weekend show, calling her another Democrat who claims to support the troops but doesn't understand them. This was his chance to confront her face-to-face. Armed with his veteran status and media following, but Crockett was not the easy target he expected. The Texas lawmaker had already made her mark as a dedicated advocate for military families and veterans. Although newer to Congress, the former civil rights attorney was known for her detailed research and fearless questioning. What few realized, and what Hegseth had clearly overlooked, was that Crockett came from a family with a long record of military service and had personally worked with veteran support organizations. Long before she entered politics, the day's hearing focused on improving via healthcare and expanding military family assistance programs. Democrats pushed for better mental health care and housing benefits, while Republicans prioritized different reforms. As a prominent veteran and media figure, Hegseth was there to offer his perspective. But this wasn't just another policy debate, it was about who truly had the right to speak for America's veterans. Hegseth assumed his combat record gave him unmatched authority while dismissing Crockett as an outsider with talking points. When the chair finally recognized her for questioning, Congresswoman Crockett leaned forward, thanked the chair, and turned directly to Hegseth. "Mr. Hegseth," she said in a steady, respectful tone, "I appreciate your testimony today and your service to our country. Before diving into your perspective on these programs, I'd like to take a moment to clarify a few important points about military experience. and who truly has the authority to speak on these matters. Hegseth nodded confidently, unaware that he had just stepped into a well-prepared exchange that would soon unravel his carefully polished public image. Mr. Hegseth, Crockett continued evenly, pulling a printed document from her folder. You've often implied that only those with direct military service should have a say in shaping defense and veterans' policies. Would that be a fair summary of your position? Absolutely, Hegseth replied without hesitation. Those of us who've been in combat understand realities that civilians simply can't grasp. That's just how it is. Crockett nodded, maintaining her calm tone. And you frequently referenced your own military background to establish authority when discussing these matters on Fox News, correct? I have, Hegseth answered confidently. I served my country in Iraq and Afghanistan. That experience gives me perspective. Thank you for confirming that, Crockett said, her voice steady. Now, Mr. Hegseth, are you aware that Article I, Section 8 of the United States Constitution gives Congress, the civilian body elected by the people, the power to raise and support armies, to maintain a navy, and to make rules governing both land and naval forces? A faint line formed between Hegseth's brows. Of course, he said cautiously. So the Founding Fathers deliberately placed military oversight in civilian hands. Is that correct? Crockett pressed. Yes, but that doesn't mean... Hegseth began before being smoothly interrupted. And are you also aware, Crockett continued, that some of our nation's most critical wartime decisions were made by leaders with no military background at all? Take President Lincoln during the Civil War, for instance. The room fell completely silent. Lawmakers and spectators leaned forward, sensing a shift in momentum. Historical examples don't change the fact that combat experience provides essential insight. Hegseth replied, his tone slightly defensive now. I don't disagree, Crockett said, surprising a few listeners. Military experience absolutely matters, which is why I've spent years working directly with veteran support organizations and consulting military families in my district. She paused briefly, then continued in a calm but pointed tone. Mr. Hegseth, earlier you implied I don't understand military issues because I haven't served. Were you aware that my father served 26 years in the U.S. Army, including 2 tours in Vietnam? Or that my brother is currently an active duty major in the U.S. Air Force? Hegseth blinked, momentarily thrown off balance. No, I wasn't aware of that. Soft murmurs rippled through the gallery. And were you aware, Crockett continued, that before entering Congress, I provided 3 years of pro bono legal services to veterans in Texas, helping them navigate complex VA benefit claims? Again, Hegseth shook his head. No, I wasn't. Crockett gave a brief nod. I understand. It seems there's more to learn about one another. She gathered her papers neatly before meeting his gaze again. Mr. Hegseth, you've often described yourself, both in your book and on your show, as battle-tested and as someone who lead troops in combat. Could you clarify for the committee which specific combat command positions you held during your deployments? The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. Members of the committee glanced around uneasily. Hegseth's jaw tightened. I served as an infantry platoon leader and later as a company executive officer. He said, his voice noticeably tense. Thank you, Crockett replied. And based on official military records, your Iraq deployment was in 2006 with the 101st Airborne Division, is that correct? Yes, Hegseth confirmed, clearly sensing where the questioning was heading, and during that deployment, Crockett said, glancing down at her documents, you were primarily assigned to security details at forward operating bases rather than leading active combat patrols. Is that accurate? Whispers rippled through the audience as all eyes turned back to Hegseth. His face flushed. That characterization is misleading, he said sharply, his earlier confidence beginning to fracture. Every role in a combat zone carries its own risks and responsibilities. Crockett said steadily, her tone calm but unyielding. And I absolutely agree every service member deployed to a war zone deserves respect, no matter their assignment. What I'm addressing here, Mr. Hegseth, is the difference between what your public statements claim and what your service record actually shows. Before Hegseth could form a response, Crockett clicked a button and a large document appeared on the hearing room screen. The title at the top read Statement from Captain James Ramirez, Hegseth's commanding officer in Iraq. According to Captain Ramirez, Crockett continued, your primary duty was coordinating security operations at Camp Liberty, not leading combat missions, as you frequently suggested in your media appearances. Is that statement inaccurate, Mr. Hegseth? The room fell silent. Cameras zoomed in as the Fox News host's earlier confidence dissolved into visible discomfort. Hegseth stared at the screen, then glanced toward the Republican side of the dais as if hoping for someone to intervene. None did. That's a mischaracterization, he finally stammered. Security work in a war zone is combat work. No one disputes that service in a war zone is meaningful, Crockett replied evenly. The issue is accuracy, specifically how you've portrayed your military experience, while questioning others' authority to discuss defense policy. She flipped to another page in her notes. Last month on your show, you said, and I quote, Crockett wouldn't understand the reality of combat decisions because she's never had to make them. Yet, according to multiple officers who served with you, including your own battalion commander, you were not in a position to make combat command decisions during your deployments. Is that correct? Hegseth tugged slightly at his collar, his face tightening under the glare of the cameras. A faint sheen of sweat was visible under the bright lights. My service record speaks for itself, he said, his voice higher than before. I'm proud of my time in uniform. As you should be, Crockett acknowledged with a nod. Every form of service deserves respect. What concerns me is the gap between how you've described that service and what your records actually reflect. Another document appeared on the screen, an official performance evaluation from Hegseth's Afghanistan deployment. Several lines were highlighted in yellow. This evaluation notes, Crockett read aloud, that your duties were primarily administrative at Bagram Air Base, yet on your show, you've claimed to have learned combat lessons from leading men in the mountains of Afghanistan. Could you help the committee understand this discrepancy? The crowd in the gallery gasped. Reporters typed furiously as cameras captured every expression. Even the committee chairman looked uneasy, glancing at his watch. This is an ambush, Hegseth snapped, his composure now completely fractured. These cherry-picked documents don't tell the full story of my service. Crockett didn't flinch. I'd be more than willing to enter your complete service record into the Congressional record, if that's your preference, she said calmly. My point, Mr. Hegseth, is simple. You've built a national platform questioning others' qualifications to discuss military issues, all while presenting a version of your own service that doesn't match official records. Turning to face the rest of the committee, Crockett continued firmly, I deeply respect every American who wears the uniform. But what I cannot respect is when someone uses that uniform as a political shield, especially while exaggerating their record to silence legitimate policy debate. Then, fixing her gaze back on Hegseth, she delivered her final question. Given these discrepancies between how you've portrayed your service and what the official documents show, do you still maintain that only those with combat experience should have a voice in shaping military policy? And if so, where exactly do you place yourself in that hierarchy? The room went utterly still. Cameras focused on Hegseth's face as he sat frozen, his jaw tight and his expression unreadable. After several long seconds, he finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. I believe my service gives me perspective, he said slowly. I've been in war zones. I've seen things. Point of order, Mr. Chairman. A Republican member interjected suddenly, breaking the tension. The gentlewoman's time has surely expired. The chairman, looking visibly relieved, nodded quickly. The gentlewoman's time has expired. The hearing room buzzed again, but the damage was already done. Yes. The gentlewoman's time has expired, the chairman declared, his gavel tapping briskly. Before we move on, Crockett interjected calmly, I'd like to submit these military records and officer statements into the official hearing record. Without objection, the chairman muttered, clearly eager to move past the uncomfortable exchange. As the next member began speaking, cameras caught Pete Hegseth whispering urgently to an aide, his posture tense as he shuffled his papers. The contrast was unmistakable. Crockett sat poised and composed, while Hegseth appeared shaken. The authority that had defined his earlier remarks, now stripped away by the weight of documented facts. For the rest of the hearing, Hegseth was noticeably subdued. Gone were the confident declarations and polished sound bites. When he began a sentence with, "as someone who served," the phrase no longer carried the same power. It now echoed with doubt about what that service truly entailed. When the session adjourned, Hegseth quickly gathered his notes and exited through a side door, avoiding the cluster of reporters waiting outside. But the viral moment was already underway. Footage of Crockett's sharp, fact-based questioning had begun spreading across social media platforms within minutes. By that evening, hashtags like #CrockettReceipts and #HEGSethExposed were trending nationwide. The most replayed clip captured the precise instant when Hegseth realized he'd been cornered. His face paling as the documents appeared on the screen behind him. The exchange transcended partisan lines. Veterans from across the political spectrum began sharing the clip, commending Crockett's precision and condemning the act of embellishing one's service record. A viral post from a Marine Corps veteran with over 50,000 followers read, "This isn't about politics. It's about honesty. When you exaggerate your service, you disrespect those who actually lived those experiences." Within hours, major networks picked up the story. CNN's banner read, "Hegseth questioned, Fox hosts military claims challenged with documents." MSNBC's headline was even sharper. "Fox host confronted, service record contradicted by official files." Even at Fox News, the incident created visible discomfort. Early reports tried to frame Crockett's questioning as a partisan ambush, but that defense quickly fell apart as military experts confirmed the authenticity of the records she cited. Primetime anchors largely avoided the topic that night, pivoting to unrelated stories. By morning, newspapers across the country had published in-depth pieces dissecting the confrontation. The Washington Post ran, "Representative Crockett exposes discrepancies in Fox host's military record." The New York Times followed with, "Examining Pete Hegseth's service, what the documents show." Military Times published a detailed report titled, "The Gap Between Television and Reality, a closer look at Hegseth's record." Veteran organizations soon weighed in. While many privately acknowledged the accuracy of Crockett's questioning, few wanted to publicly criticize a well-known advocate for veteran causes. The American Legion released a carefully worded statement, "We honor all who serve, regardless of their specific roles." However, accuracy in representing that service is essential, especially for public figures who use their veteran status as a professional credential. The professional fallout for Hegseth was swift. A scheduled appearance on Fox and Friends was abruptly canceled, with the network citing a scheduling conflict. His publisher postponed the tour for his upcoming book on military leadership, and several veterans organizations quietly removed his name from event lineups and websites. 3 days after the hearing, Hegseth finally addressed the controversy on his weekend show. Reading from a prepared statement, he admitted that he could have been more precise in describing his military roles, but insisted his service in war zones still gave him valuable insight that non-veterans lack. Notably, he made no mention of Representative Crockett or the hearing itself, and his co-hosts did not press him on the topic. By the following week, multiple veterans who had served alongside Hegseth began coming forward with statements of their own, further fueling the ongoing national discussion about integrity, military service, and accountability in public life. While every veteran who came forward acknowledged Pete Hegseth's honorable service, most confirmed Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett's account of his role. A former sergeant from his unit told Military.com, "Pete did his job well and served honorably, but the idea that he was leading troops in intense combat is just not accurate. He was mainly stationed at the FOB, the Forward Operating Base, handling administrative and security coordination." There's nothing wrong with that. It's essential work. But it's not what he describes on television. For Congresswoman Crockett, the aftermath brought national attention, though she handled it with humility and professionalism. She declined most interview requests, releasing only a short statement. My questions were about accuracy and accountability, not politics. Every veteran deserves our respect, including Mr. Hegseth. What no one deserves is immunity from factual scrutiny, especially when questioning others' authority to speak. Her measured tone made the exchange even more impactful. This wasn't a partisan attack. It was a fact-based correction from a lawmaker committed to truth and oversight. Observers across the political spectrum recognized that Crockett's approach highlighted integrity over ideology. The confrontation had far-reaching consequences. Media outlets began publishing thoughtful analyses about how veteran status is used in political debates. Articles with titles like Serving Honorably versus Claiming Authority, the new conversation about veterans in politics, and when is military experience relevant to policy, explored the delicate balance between respect for service and honesty about experience. In Washington, congressional staffers took note. Committees quietly began verifying witness backgrounds more carefully, particularly those who cited military service as the basis for their expertise. No one wants to be the next committee caught off guard, a senior aide told Politico. We're now checking service records before hearings, especially when credibility depends on them. But perhaps the most meaningful shift occurred within the veteran community itself. A national advocacy group launched the campaign, Serve with Honor, Speak with Accuracy, urging veterans in public life to represent their service truthfully and precisely. The campaign's message was simple, that integrity in how service is portrayed is a continuation of the values upheld in uniform. 6 months later, the long-term effects were unmistakable. Pete Hegseth remained at Fox News, but his tone had changed noticeably. He began referring to serving overseas rather than leading troops in combat, and his online profiles were quietly updated, removing phrases like combat leader and battlefield commander. Meanwhile, Congresswoman Crockett's stature within the House grew. Her precision and professionalism earned praise from both sides of the aisle. Democratic leadership began assigning her to high-profile hearings where preparation and factual rigor were crucial. The Atlantic published a feature calling her a prosecutor's mind in a politician's chair. When asked about the hearing that brought her national attention, she simply said, I believe in doing my homework. When someone makes claims that shape policy, those claims should be supported by facts. Among veterans, the hearing became a touchstone, a reminder that the truest way to honor military service is through honesty. As one veteran advocate wrote in a widely shared essay, we don't need to exaggerate our service to make it meaningful. The truth is enough, and it's the only thing that truly honors those who served beside us. For many Americans, the moment represented something rare in modern politics, a triumph of preparation over posturing, facts over flair. Crockett's calm, disciplined approach reminded viewers that accountability isn't partisan. It's patriotic. The lasting takeaway was clear and powerful. In any discussion of military service and sacrifice, accuracy matters. Those who claim authority based on their service must be ready for that service to be examined, not to diminish their contribution, but to ensure that truth remains the highest form of respect. For those who serve, if you found this breakdown of how Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett exposed discrepancies in Pete Hegseth's military record informative, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Drop a comment below on which political moment you'd like us to analyze next, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our upcoming video. 5 research tactics Crockett uses that you can apply in your own life. Thanks for watching, and remember, integrity is the strongest form of leadership.